everyone. Welcome to FEBE on this beautiful August day. I am Lisa Mackin. I'm with Lorain County Community College and our neo-launch department there, and we are the hosts of FEBE Morning. And we'd also like to thank Dunkin' Donuts for providing us with our coffee and tea today. And we have a wonderful speaker today. What is better on an August day than to think about being out on our beautiful Lake Erie and fishing? And to tell us about that story is going to be Joe Bennett and Joe Bennett Seafood. So I'm going to just give you a brief history about Joe. 3 generations. His grandfather started the business almost 100 years ago. They're going to celebrate their 100th anniversary in 1919. I think that's what everyone as an entrepreneur wants to know, that 100 years from now you're going to be talked about in your business. So that, to me, just gives me goosebumps. His father, then Jim, took it over, and now Joe. So he was named after his grandfather, so when Joe, Jim, Joe. And his business is in Elyria, while his warehouse is in Sugar Lane. He now works out of his home. He sold his business to Blue Ribbon Meats, but then he still works with them, and I'll let him get into all the details of that. So without further ado, Mr. Joe Bennett, Bennett Seafood.
Well, thank you and good morning. Buongiorno, as my grandfather would say every morning, and say to my father, can't you say good morning in the morning, you know? So I come from an Italian family. My grandfather, Joe Bennett, came to America. He was working on a fishing boat, and he came, I think it was like a day or two after the San Francisco earthquake. And he spoke of the stories as, running up to the rail of the boat and seeing the fireballs on the hills, of all the destruction, all the fires. And when they landed there, San Francisco was under martial law. And a lot of the Italians and the Chinese and Japanese, a lot of the foreigners, they were put in a stockade because, there was looting. People were going into banks, they were going into stores, they were taking stuff. And my grandfather has, a 14, 16-year-old. And just think, 14, 16-year-old, he leaves Italy, Reggio Calabria, where he's from, he comes to America, he sees all this going on. Just think of all of us at 14 or 16, leaving our mom and dad going, we're going to Europe, I'm going to Europe, see you later, So I think it was just really, all the stuff he did in his life was really interesting. So he tells her the story. He gets put in a stockade, so every day they would be pulled out to help with the dead, help with these burning buildings. He told us the story, and so when everything kind of settled down, there was a police officer, and he really liked my grandfather. And our real name is Panuzzo, and I'll tell you that story right now. And so the policeman said to him, he said, "What's your name?" My grandfather said, "Joe Panuzzo," and he said, I can't pronounce it. He said, "Your name's Joe Bennett." So he let him go, So my grandfather, taking this name of American, Joe Bennett, he goes, he fishes Alaska, he fishes all over. I guess there was, they needed fishermen here on Lake Erie, so he migrated to Lorain, Ohio, and that's where it all started. He started working for Rigger Werner Fish Company, who I grew up with Carl Werner. I don't know if any of you know him, but he runs Lake Erie Electric. And he works there for a while, and then he says to himself, like any entrepreneur, I don't want to work for somebody, I want to work for myself. So he started Bennett Fish on the east side of Lorain, and bought 2 boats. First he started with a gill net boat, and I'll tell you about gill netting, and then he started with a trap net boat. And he made this business grow. He married my grandma, and then the kids come along, and my father came along. And my father was a very big part of this, as you'll see in the story. And so my dad tells me the stories, when he was 12 years old, or 14, and back then it wasn't like all of us. You could, you kept going to school to graduate, to go to college or whatever. He was pulled out of school at a young age, 12 or 14, to cut fish in the fish house. And that was back when there was blue pike. Blue pike was, I don't know if any of you have ever been fishing, but there's a walleye that's yellow. The blue pike were really a beautiful bluish to them. And when my grandfather would go on the lake, he'd say, my dad's name was Jim's, but he called, when you're Italian or any European, you always have a nickname. My dad's nickname was Fritz. He'd say, "Fritz, when I get back off the lake, those fish better be cut." And my dad, you know, he would always be explaining this to me as we'd be delivering fish in the truck. And he said, when your grandfather said they better be cut, he wasn't joking around. It was like our kids. Yeah, okay, I'll do it, you know. So that's where the work ethic started. And then as time rolled on, my dad, you know, grew older, married my mom, and then my grandfather in the 60s retired. And my father took over the business. And he said it was, you know, tough, you know, going on the lake and, you know, catching the fish and bringing them back in and processing them, and then starting to have a family. You know, during the winter, it's hard because there's not the income coming in. So you have to kind of live off the fish you put away, if you could put fish away, because as my grandfather and father had this problem, at the end of the week and going into the next week, you know, like you have to pay your employees. You can't just, you know, not pay your employees. You have to, employees come first, so you have to make sure you have enough money put away. So there was good years and there was rough years, but it all worked out for a while. And then you remember Lake Erie, everything got real polluted in the 60s. And my father said it was getting really tough because the catches were just kept going down and down and down. Now, we remember, you know, the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. And so my dad had 6 of us boys to take care of and take care of my mother. So he went to drive a concrete truck at Consumers. It's the blue cement trucks if you see them running around. And the Rydell family, God bless them, they were really good to my father. And so he went there to take care of us 6 boys and my mom. And he still commercial fished on the weekends because, you know, we all know what it's like to be in love. And I know to be in business for yourself, that's how I explain it to people. I'm in love with it. I'm in love with this Bennett fish that as a young age I started, it gets into your blood and I can't get it out. You know, everything about me is with the fish. You know, I talk it all day, I talk it at night, you know, it makes me tick. So my dad, you know, went on with the doing that and working weekends. And then I graduated in 1978 from Lorain High School. And my father, well, first, you know, as most fathers do, you know, they don't just hand you everything. You know, my father said to me, came home one day and, you know, you remember when you graduate, you start hanging out with your buddies and all your friends and you're still going partying and stuff like that. So one day my dad came home from work and he said, guess what, Joe? And I said, what, Dad? He said, I got you a job. I said, whoa, what kind of job did you get me? He said, on a fish boat, of course. So there was an older gentleman, Zig Zadorowicz, a Polish guy who had been a commercial fisherman and worked with my uncle. And he said, you're going to go work with Zig. So I went down over to this man's house at a young age, and he sat me down and he said, well, Joe, this is what we're going to do. And he explained what we're going to do. So I got my oilers, and you see how the deadliest catch, how they wear the oilers, and so you don't get wet in the boots and everything. And I drove down the boat, 7 o'clock in the morning, you know. And he said, okay, come on the boat, you know. So I got on the boat, and he says, first we're going to learn how to set the nets. So in a gill net goes off the back of the boat. It has a cork and a lead line. So just imagine this net sits in the water like this is the bottom of Lake Erie. So the cork line floats it, and the lead line keeps it sturdy. So and the webbing in between is like a diamond, just pretend like you see in a fence. And so what the perch does, the perch swims until he gets his head caught in that fence. And then he can't go backwards or frontwards, and he's gilled. So that's a gill net. And so, you know, he taught me how to set these nets. You know, first we threw out the buoy that marks the net, and then we threw out the anchor that keeps it steady, and then we started putting these nets in the water, and he's teaching me, and I'm picking it up. And so we get done, and he said, okay, I'll see you at 7 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So, okay, I'll see you at 7 o'clock. So I went out with my friends. And you know what it's like when you go out with your friends, you know, you ain't going home at 10 o'clock at night, you know. So I went home like 1 o'clock in the morning. My mother's like, oh, you got to go to work tomorrow. You got to go with Zig, you know, because, you know, when you grow up with parents like we all grew up with, you got to be there tomorrow. If you're man enough to go out or woman enough to go out at night, you're strong enough to get up in the morning. So my mom shakes me. You got to go on the lake. You know, it's time to go. I said, I just went to sleep. She goes, too bad. You know, so I get up and I wash up. I drive down to this boat, and I get on the boat with them, and we drive out to the nets, and we get to the buoy, and the sun's coming up, and it's beautiful out, and I'm thinking, you know, at 20-some years old, I love this. This is great. So we pull the buoy in, and we bring around the first line, and then the nets start coming in, and they're full of fish, just flipping, perch, you know. And so I'm tailing the machine. The machine grabs the line of the net, and it brings it in. And when it comes around halfway, it drops it into the box. So the fish were just low. It was like Jesus was with us, you know. So the fish are coming in. He's happy, and I'm happy seeing the fish. He's happy. He's running the boat, you know, keeping us off the nets. The machine's pulling them. You know, he's happy because he sees the dollar signs. I'm thinking of how beautiful it is. And so we bring in the nets, and then what you do is you bring the nets in, and after every 120-foot length of net, you disconnect the net. You tie the cork and the lead line, and then if it's full, you put them in a box, and then you start bringing more nets in. So we brought all the nets in that day. It was a nice day. We threw the anchor out. We pulled it back. If you've been on a boat, you know, the boat was steady. Nice day out there. So then he said, I'm going to show you how to pick fish. So I sat down. I put my apron on so the nets wouldn't fall through my lap. And you go from the left to the right. You pull the nets across your lap. And then he showed me how to take a hook and to pull them out. So we pulled all these fish, and we start stacking the boxes, and then when we were done, we ate lunch, and it was nice because it was just Zig and Joe, and on the pool machine, it was round like this. It had a top, and we put our lunches up there, and we started eating lunch. And then he started telling me the stories of working as a young man with my Uncle Pete Lagana. He says, you know, your Uncle Pete, he says, he used to tell me, Zig, someday they're going to send a man to Jupiter. He couldn't say Jupiter, he said Jupiter. And so, you know, he told me these stories of my grandfather, my uncle, and all these people that were affiliated with the fish business. And we ate our lunch, and he said, okay, now we're going to take the fish in. So he drove the boat, and I just kind of looked out the window and just, you know, again, falling in love with this. You know, it's like dating, you know, you know, it's going through my body. I'm just, you know, I said, this is what I want to do with my life. And we came in, we loaded the fish in these 100-pound plastic boxes with handles. We loaded them onto his pickup truck. And then we drove them up to, my Aunt Mary had the fish house on Broadway. It was called Lagana Fish. I don't know if any of you know of it. But we took them up to Aunt Mary's. We put them on the scale. We weighed them. We wrote a ticket. We had 978 pounds that day of Lake Erie yellow perch in the round, whole fish. And we put them in the cooler. We put them on these dollies, and we rolled them in the cooler. We iced them up. And he said, I'll see you tomorrow. And there was the life starting of all this business. And then I worked with him, and I learned the fish business, and he taught me very well. And that's one thing I think that we all want. You know, if you want to be an entrepreneur or you want to be in business, you have to have that special someone that is going to teach you. You know, he opened his heart and his soul and everything to me and said, I'm going to teach you how to be the best fisherman you can be. And that's what I wanted to be, the best. And he helped me. And then down the road, I started thinking, you know, well, you know, my dad has a commercial fishing license. You know, what are we going to do here? You know, so my dad let me, you know, finish out a season with him. And then the next season was coming up through the winter. And my dad said, well, I think you've done a great job, Joe. We are going to build a boat, and you're going to be the captain, and I'm going to teach you what I know besides what Zig taught you. So we built this boat, and Zig had taught me how to sew the nets. So in my parents' basement, we put out these nets, and we took the webbing, and I sewed them in, and we started fishing that year. My dad had retired from Consumers Ready Mix and said, you know, like all good fathers, he said, you know, I'm just here along for the ride, Joe. It's all yours. Everything you make, everything you do, it's yours. But I want you to respect the lake. That was one big thing, respect the lake. If it gets too rough, come in, because he always said, I can replace the nets, but I can't replace you. So, you know, I'm very lucky. My grandfather, father, they were, you know, great mentors and good visionaries. So we fished, and I learned where to catch the best fish. We first started off at Beaver Park, and we caught good fish there, but we caught a lot of junk fish, it's called. We caught like white bass and white perch, and you know, which these fish are good, but everybody wants the yellow perch. That's what they want to eat around here on Friday nights. So I started venturing with the boat. And I started going to the east side of Lorain, where I grew up, with St. Anthony's. And I started fishing down towards Sheffield Lake, where my wife grew up. And back then, you know, I didn't have all the instruments that they have now. I didn't have the GPS and everything we have on our phone today. And so I would take landmarks off the shore, like St. Anthony's Church. Down by Sheffield Lake, there was these 2 blue water towers. So I started fishing off of there. And I started catching all yellow perch pretty much. And I said, wow, this is what I want to do. You know, I want to be where the good stuff is. So, you know, it all went, and it was all good. And but like anything, there's always a good and there's always something bad that comes along. I don't know if you want to call it bad, or, you know, everybody has something that happens. For years, we had struggled with the sport fishing industry. The sport fishing industry was saying, you know, the commercial fishermen, they're taking all the fish. You know, we're going walleye fishing yesterday. We couldn't catch no walleye. It's their fault. Everybody wants to blame somebody. And I was a young man, and I had to listen to this. And it was very tough to take. So Governor Celeste was our governor. And I don't know if you guys remember Governor Celeste, but a very good governor. I got to say that about him. You know, the sport fishing industry really pushed hard to submit a bill to put us out of business. And the governor said, I can't put these people out of a livelihood without paying them. Well, of course, when the payments come out, you know, they did a 5-year back. So you got paid on the 5, but I was just starting into fishing, so I wasn't as seasoned as the other boats, you know, who were catching maybe, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds of fish. So I only got paid on what I caught, which was good, but wasn't that good, not like them. So what they did was they came up with a formula, the best 3 years out of the last 5 years, and I saw with a swipe of the pen, no more commercial fishing for me. So I went home, and I sold my gear, I sold my boat, I sold my nets. A guy come from Indiana, a guy come from around the Port Clinton to buy my boat because it was a steel boat. He worked around, did construction. And I went to work at Invacare, and I went to work at this place and that place, and I would quit and come home. My mother would say, aren't you going to work? I said, no, I'm not going to go do that. I'm not going to work over there. I want to fish. I want to be in the fish business. I don't want to work at Invacare or this one or that one. She goes, what are you going to do? I said, I'll figure something out. I'm going to think about it. So I lived at home with my parents, and I found out that there was still commercial fishing in Erie, Pennsylvania. It was called Kern's Fishery. So I said, well, if I can't catch them, I'll go buy them. And we'll process them in my parents' garage, and I'll start selling fillets because I want to still be in this business. And along with this, I don't want to lose you, but there's trap net fishing. And trap net fishing is a fishing that my grandfather and father did, where the fish swims to the fence, but the fence is not big enough to catch the fish, so it's smaller. So what it'd be like a person that runs into the fence, what are you going to do? You're either going to swim this way or you're going to swim this way. So if the fish swim in that direction to the right, they'll go into a car, and then they'll go into the next car. It's called a car, it's actually a box. And then they can't figure their way back out. So they got to keep on fishing. We got, put out because the gill net was, killing off all the fish. So I started off to Erie, Pennsylvania. Kearns Fishery. Went there, met this older fellow, Ed. I said, I want to buy some fish from you. He said, sure, you got money? I said, yeah, I got money, because that's the one thing in this business. They want to make sure you got money to pay your bill. So at first when I started off, I used to take cash everywhere. And then when they would get to know me, they'd say, okay, you're good. We've gotten to know you. You'll pay the bill. Give us a check. So I used to go to Canada and pick up fish. I used to pick up fillets in Canada, not round fish. In Erie, PA, I picked up round fish. And I started, I'd bring, $5,000 with me, I'm counting this money out. So I met Jim Bell in Canada, and Jim's like, he sees my father, he sees me, he sees we're good people. He said, don't bring the cash no more. You're going to get, somebody's going to jump you or something, So I started writing a check. So if round fish from Erie, Pennsylvania. We brought them back, cut them in my mom and dad's garage. I went to Canada and picked up fillets and brought those back. And I started calling restaurants. And I called the corner restaurant. It was in Lorain, where I grew up. And I said, hey, I'm Joe Bennett. Would you like to buy some Lake Erie perch? Well, sure. What's your price? I said, well, this is the price. Okay, bring some. Bring us 25 pounds of fresh fish this week. So, I put them in my truck, and I take them to the corner. And then the snowball started. I had a little freezer in my parents' basement. I used to keep lobster tails and stuff. And I started saying, I would say to Rich Foyle, and Rich is another mentor of mine who really spent a lot of time with me. And I just think mentors are the people that will take you up and up the ladder. And they don't charge you for it. They do it, and just like I don't, they do it because out of the kindness of their heart. And I'd say to him, well, Rich, if I could sell you lobster tails or I could sell you snow crab clusters, would you buy them from me? He'd say, sure, Joe, give me a price. So I give him a price, and the business just built and built. It was like the snowball effect. It just kept getting bigger and bigger. And then I outgrew my mom and dad's garage and their basement. And my brother, Chris, my youngest brother, he's a fireman in Lorain. He came back from the Air Force. He was a dog handler. And I met with them and I said, Chris, why don't you come in with me? We'll get a building and we'll really make this thing go. And we looked and looked, and he came to me one day and he said, I found the perfect building, Joe. He said, it's on the east side of Lorain, it's across from St. Anthony's Church. It's Thomas's gas station, but we can fix it up and we can make it go. So we went to Bert Thomas and I negotiated a rent with him. And he said, sure, Joe. And so we had moved in there, and we started selling fish out of there and built up the wholesale route. And then you always have to have a couple things going for you, because we all know today you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So I said to my brother, I said, let's put a retail store in. So we put a little retail store in. And I'm thinking to myself, and in business, you have to be creative. When you wake up in the morning, you have to think because my father used to say, well, years ago, and I say, Dad, years ago is great. But today, you've got to be thinking ahead of the curve. You've got to be thinking of what people are not doing that you can do to make yourself stand out. So we put this little retail store in. So I told my brother, I said, you call the Journal, and I want you to put in the Journal that we are going to give a free lobster tail to the first 20 customers that come in. Well, we opened the retail store at 9 o'clock in the morning. 8:15, there's people standing line. He goes, Joe, look what you created. But it was thinking out of the box, and that's what you have to do. I think that's been the type of person I've been my whole life. If I was your friend, I'm like my dad, my grandfather. If I'm your friend, I'm your friend. And I'm going to promote you, and I'm going to promote me. It's just the way I grew up. And I've always been thinking of things to help people and help myself. And I really believe, like a lot of people say, it comes back to you in the end. Because from being the 20-year-old to the 59-year-old, I see it come back. So we grew this retail. So the retail's going good. We got people coming in. Not giving any more lobster tails away, but I'm charging nice prices and giving them good fish. Then comes along, I say, well, we got to do something else. So we got we got to get a scaling machine. So the scaling machine, what the scaling machine does is you take the perch and your walleye and you put it in, and it goes through a belt and it scales both sides of the fish, and then you can process them. So we set up a processing room, but we needed a scaling machine. And life is also this. It is negotiations. Are you guys all good negotiators? Because that's what you got to be. I mean, you're negotiating with everybody your whole life. You're negotiating with your mom. I used to say to my mom, Mom, I remember the John Havlicek gym shoe. I played basketball. I'm like, Mom, I want a pair of those John Havlicek shoes. Well, how much are they, Joey? I said, they're $80, Mom. $80? Oh, my God. She says, I'll tell you what I'll do. She says, takes me in her room, on her dresser with the Virgin Mary. She puts $40. She says, there's half. I'm going halfway with you. When you have the other $40, you come to me with your paper route or whatever, and we'll go down to, I'll have your father take us to Januzzi's shoes. So that was where I learned negotiations with my mother. God bless her. My mom was a great mother to raise 6 boys. You can imagine, I'm raising 2 and I know what that's like, and I have good sons. And so I came with my 40, she came with her 40. We went to my father, we went to Januzzi. I got the John Havlicek gym shoes and began to play basketball, which I loved basketball at that time. And so back to the scaling machine. So they make these scaling machines in Canada. And so the guy came over and he explained them to us, the machine, Joe's going to be, back then they were like 20 or 30, 20,000 now. Back then maybe they were like 10. So I said, I'll call him George. I said, George, what if I give you 2,000 cash right now, and we will send you the $8,000 balance. I'll send it to you. My brother will send you a check every month. I divided it within the 12 months. I said, I'll have you paid off in a year, because I can't go to the bank right now, because it is going to the bank, especially today. It's very difficult to get money. He said, you know what, Joe? Okay. So I gave him the cash for a down payment, and he sent us the machine. And we were starting to cook. I mean, we were just starting to make things roll. And every month, like I told him, and this is another thing in business, when you give your word, you give your word. And if I tell you I'm going to do something for anybody in this room or any of the chefs I deal with, they'll all tell you, they'll say, Joe, if he tells you something, he's going to do it. And so we processed and paid the machine off. And then I said to him, well, we got this machine. Let's see, what else could we use it for? Here thinking out of the box again. I'm looking at Lake Erie. I'm looking at Spitzer Marina goes in, charter boats. We got 50 charter boats. I said to my brother, my dad, we'll cut fish for the sportsmen. They were like, really? I said, yeah, we'll charge them. We'll charge them $1.50 a pound and a round for perch and $1 for walleye. That's whole weight. So I started going down to the boats, and I'd say, hey, Captain so-and-so, how you doing? I said, I'm Joe Bennett. I got the fish place up there across from St. Anthony's, right down the street from you. Bring your fish when you bring your 6 people in, and we'll fillet your fish, and we'll take good care of them. Wow, Joe, that's great. So then we started doing sport fish. So we had the income from the retail store. Christmas would come, and Christmas was great because everybody takes the money out at Christmas. You want the lobster tails and the king crab legs and all the good stuff. And everybody, all of us, at Christmas, that's how I am. I buy for everybody. Christmas is the big day in my life, the biggest of the year. And so these guys started bringing, walleye. And at that time, it was 10 limit. And, 10 limit, 6 guys, plus the captain and his first mate, that's a lot of fish. That's 60, 70, 80 fish. So we get these coolers full of fish, start cutting these fish, and they're paying us cash. And cash is, in business, cash talks. It really does. It's amazing how many people, going to the guy with, and buying these fish sometimes, paying cash. It's everybody's eyes open up to cash. So there was my next step. And then clam bake season came along. I said, you know what? We can make money in clams. I'm watching other people do it. I said, why can't we do it? I said, well, we need steamers. So I got a hold of a steamer, Rich Foyle from the Corner Restaurant in Lorain. my mentor again. I said, can I borrow one of your steamers? He said, better yet, he said, I'll give you the printout of the diagram of the steamer. So we went to Louis Kuhn, Fabricating, South Lorain. Took these plans to him. I said, Louis, can you build me these steamers? He said, yeah, Joe, no problem. I said, well, work me up a price and let me know. So he called me and said, hey, it's going to be like 1,000, 1,200 steamer. I go, okay, build me 5. So he builds 5 steamers. We get the burners to go under them. I started talking to a guy in Rhode Island about clams. We'll put them on the refrigerated truck for you. We'll send them right to your fish house. We started these clam bakes. So see, it was different gears making this business run. When the retail was slowing down, the sport fish was kicking in. So, I had it hitting on all 8 cylinders. And it was good. And then the sport fishing went from no limit on perch to 50. So we're still doing good. And then it went from 50 to 30. And then I told my father and my brother, I said, we're not making enough money. This is not worth it. And things started changing. Lorain started changing. And then I had a Chef Dylan Carrion. He's a great friend, great friend of mine. He's a chef at Scioto Country Club in Columbus. Grew up on the west side of Lorain, went to Lorain Catholic. And Dylan came to my fish house one day, and I had my little son Dominic with me. He was like 10 then, and we were closing the side door, and he came and he said, oh, that's okay, you're with your son. And I respected that, I was with my son. But I said, Dominic, don't mind. What do you need? He says, well, I'm the chef at Jackalope. I need some perch, I need this, I need that. And I said, no problem. I opened the door. I got everything for him, because one thing I'm big on is service. You have to take care of your people, because the first impression, like with all of us, the first impression is the lasting one. It's the one you build on. So I got him his box of perch, which today in Canada they send perch fillets through a machine and it blast freeze them like cookies. So there's like 11 pounds in a box. And they're single. They can, a chef or anybody at home, I sell to home customers. If anybody ever wants to buy anything, there's my cards. You can pull out what you want that day. Maybe pull out 20 fillets and you can thaw them real quick. You can thaw them in minutes and cook them. So I got him his perch and his walleye and everything else he needed. Helped him load it up into his car. And he said, what about the bill, Joe? I said, I know, Jim. I'll bill you next week. I said, I'm going to run with my son. He goes, oh, okay. So he took off to go do his job. I had done mine. I locked the door, and I said, okay, Dominic, what do you want to do today? And we went and goofed off that day. Well, that relationship, and it's all about relationships, has lasted to this day. And when Dylan, as a chef, I never knew what chefs really live like until I got to know a couple of these guys. And I'll tell you something, the restaurant you go into, if the chef's really good, he lives a life of, it's like owning your own business. It's like they're thinking of the place when they're not there. They got 30 orders hanging up. I mean, I don't know how they do it. I mean, a chef is underpaid, very underpaid as far as I'm concerned. I tell them all the time, you guys should be making 100 grand or 150 grand a year. Well, Joe, we wish we were making that. So with Dylan Carrion, nice Irish kid, he used to come down to the fish house, and what I really respected about him is he spent a lot of time with my father. And my father had a lot of stories, because he had been on the lake his whole life, and he had lived in Lorain his whole life, and he had seen the Depression, and he had seen just so much in his life, and they really connected. And when Dylan got married, his reception was at Leary Country Club. And my father had just passed away. And I had supplied the fish for his, the sea bass and stuff for his wedding. And so, of course, he wasn't going to make the funeral, right? He's going to fly off on his honeymoon with his nice wife and, begin their journey. And I'm at the funeral home and I'm greeting people. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. this little lady comes up to me, this little Irish lady, and she says, "Are you Joe Bennett?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "I'm Dylan Kieran's mother. I want to come here to represent my son." And, excuse me, I'm the type of person that's going to stay with me the rest of my life. That he sent his mom to represent him while he was flying out on a plane for his honeymoon. And that's the type of people you surround yourself with. And, it's all about the relationships. It's about the relationships. So I gave you my introduction of who I am and where I came from and what I've done with my life. And when I was sitting with my wife last night, she had the house tore apart. She's painting. So she called me. She said, "Joe, we need more paint. Stop at Home Depot on your way home from delivery." I was delivering to the Blind Perch in Vermilion. So I said, "Sure, honey." I says, "Why don't you, Brenda got you a new phone. Why don't you take a picture of it?" Joe, my wife, she likes it simple, I like it simple too. I said, "Just have him take a picture." "Well, he's doing something, I said, "Okay, well, when I get to Home Depot, I'll call you." So that all worked out. But when I got up this morning, I looked at my house, and it's all tore apart. My wife had painted the ceiling. And there's another person in my life that's been a mentor, and my mother used to say, "Joey, surround yourself with the right people, you'll go this way. Surround yourself with the wrong people, and you're going to go that way, behind." And it is so true. And so back to the fish business. So we're cooking along, and this chef Dylan Kieran comes to me one day. He says, "Joe, I think it's time for you to leave Lorain." I said, "Dylan, I grew up in Lorain. Lorain's my life. It's my business, my trucks, my building, my processing, my people, 12 employees." He says, "You got to get out of here." He says, "It's changing." I said, "What am I going to do?" He says, "There's a company in Cleveland, a meat company, Blue Ribbon Meats, and they're looking for a seafood company just like yours and a guy just like you." He goes, "Think about it." So I thought about it. So I said, "Okay." So he gives me Mike Radis' phone number. I call Mike Radis. I says, "This is Joe Bennett." "Oh, Joe, how you doing? I heard a lot about you. Let's have a meeting." So I met with him and his accountant brother, the youngest brother, David Radis. And they said, Mike said, "I called one of our customers, and they said, 'Mike, I'll take 30 T-bone steaks, and I'll take 20 porterhouses, and I'll take 50 strip steaks. I'll take this, that. And by the way, throw some salmon on, and throw some U10 dry sea scallops on, and some lobster tails.'" And he said, whoa, wait. He said, "Wait, John," to the chef. And John says, "What?" He says, "We have the meat, but we don't have the seafood." John goes, "Oh, sorry, you don't get the order today. I got to call Michael's Meats or somebody that has seafood too." Because Michael Meats had acquired a friend of mine's seafood company. So they hung up. So he went to his brother and said, "We got to get a seafood company, a seafood company." So we sat down, and they said, "Joe, we're going to treat you good. We're going to take care of you and your family. We're going to pay you this. We're going to give you medical. We're going to this, that, and this. You'll get vacation time," which, when you own your own business, there's not too much vacation time at the beginning. So I said to Mike and David Radis, I said, "Okay, I'll do it." So we moved everything from Lorain to 67th and Denison, Cleveland. And I started going out with the salesman, because I'm a salesman. And we just took everything there, and next thing you know, the fish company took off, the meat company's going good, and everything's going good. And I'm making a good paycheck. And the first couple weekends, I'm home with my family. And I'm sitting in a chair, and I'm eating a sandwich or something, and I'm like, I felt guilty. I felt like I should be at work. And after a month, I forgot all about that. And that's what we all need to do that are entrepreneurs or in business, or as all hard as we're all working today, because we all work very hard, we need to take time for family and friends. And that's what you see now. You know, I just had a friend, Mike Zatrock, he works in Michigan, he builds, I don't know, big buildings or something, and all my friends have done great. And he says, Joe, he says, my mom and dad want you to come to Paper Moon in Vermillion. So it was nice to go see these families that I grew up with, and I started reminiscing. I started telling his nephews. They said, oh, you know, because Mike's a pretty straight guy, you know, but I'm always pushing him, you know. Mike, we got to do this, we got to do that. I said, yeah, I said, we used to skip school at your Uncle Mike's, your grandparents. Of course, you know, everybody misses school once in a while, and I told him the story of, I said, we're all at, this is where I'm creative again, I said, so we're all at Mike Zatrock's, and of course this wouldn't work today with our phones that have IDs to tell you where you're calling from. We were all sitting around talking, and we all said, hey, you know, I don't know if any of you are in real estate. Anyone in real estate? Do you know Jeff Neal?
Yes.
So I grew up with Jeff Neal. So Jeff forgot and went to Lorain High that day, and we all stayed at Mike's house. So everybody's like, boy, we wish Jeff was here. I said, I wish he was here too, but I'll get him here. And they were like, Joe, how are you going to get him from the school to here? I said, don't worry, watch me. So I walked over to the rotor phone, and I dialed Lorain High School. And they're watching me going, what are you going to do? And I said, and this is all in, you know, I mean, we all got to have a little bit of fun with our life, you know? I mean, if anybody in business or anybody in life tells you they never did a little this or that, they're not telling you the truth. So I called Lorain High School. So the lady answers, the secretary, she says, Lorain High School. I said, this is Mr. Neal. My son Jeff has to come home today. There's been an emergency. So she said, oh, I hear her paging on the pager, you know, over the loudspeaker. Jeff Neal, come to the office. Jeff Neal, come to the office. So Jeff comes down, he thinks there's an emergency at home. So he comes and he gets on the phone and he says, Dad, what happened? I said, it's Joe Bennett. We're going to get you out of school today. And he says, Joe, what'd you do this for? And I'm saying, don't talk too loud. You're going to get us in trouble. But Jeff Neal is another one, a great friend of mine. He's had a heart attack. Jeff and I used to go pick up fish in Watertown, New York. I used to worry, I remember one night we were sleeping, he's in his bed, I'm in mine, and I go and I don't hear him breathing as well. And I went and I'm like listening, like you know, my son had open heart surgery at 4 months, my son Brendan, and that was a life changer. And when we went through that, I came to work and I told, this when we're back over here, I told my younger brother Chris, I said, it's all on you. I'm going to University Hospitals and I'm not coming back. You can call me on my cell phone. Whatever you need, I'm with you on the phone, but my son is very sick. He has to have open heart surgery. So anyways, we went off to, but I was listening to make sure Jeff was breathing because I was so worried. I said, you know, what if he dies and he's with me, you know? So he looks up at me, he's like, Joe, what are you doing? So that's my life experience with Jeff of going to Watertown, New York, and in which he helped me. Jeff is a great guy. I am so blessed. Mike Zatrock, Jeff Neal, Louis Rango, detective, just retired in Charlotte, North Carolina. You know, pretty much, you know, Joe, you got to do this and you got to do that. Comes out on the commercial fishing boat with me, and he's like, I love it out here. I'm relaxed. I mean, this, you know, strong, tough detective in a young age is telling me, now I know why you like coming out here. So he calmed down and he had a good day. But that, I think, you know, it's mentors, it's family, it's friends. I've all been behind them and they've been behind me. And that's what you have to have when you're in business. And the other thing in business is you have to be a good salesperson. You have to be a person that when you go and you tell somebody you're going to do something for them or you're going to be there on a certain day. I worked with, I just had lunch with him. It was Vern Swick. He is from Norwalk, Ohio, and he is now lives in Atlanta, Georgia. And Vern is 78, something like that, 80 years old, and I'm 59. And we love sitting at the Jackalope talking about business. I mean, he's like Joe. You know, I want to start something again. I mean, this guy's retired. You know, he wants to get going because he has the love in his veins. But what I want to tell you about Vern, my other mentor, is this book here, where I put my notes and everything. We went into a restaurant. And I want all you probably all do it with your phone or write it down. You know, I used to be the one that, you know, like I would come and talk to you and say, hey, you would say, Joe, I want you to come on Tuesday of next week at 10 o'clock, and I want you to bring me the prices on lobster tails and perch and walleye. And I would say, okay. And then I would leave and forget about it. I mean, just, you know, some of the things, sometimes I did that, you know, sometimes I remember, sometimes I didn't. So he saw me, and he took me to Staples. This is where it says Staples here. And so we went in to see a customer, and I told him, I said, okay, John, I'll be here Tuesday at 10 o'clock, and I told him all what I just told you. And we got in the car, and I went to start the car, and he goes, he turns the key off. I look at Vern, I said, Vern, what's up? He said, break out your book. You told John you're going to be there next Tuesday at 10 o'clock, and you are going to give him those prices. You write that in your book, so when Tuesday morning comes, or Monday night when you're looking at your notes, you're going to know to go see him. And you know what? There's my other mentor, Vern Swick. Another one of my best friends, is just been a great mentor to me. And I want you, I don't know if we could pass these out. These are some pictures from when I first got started. First one will be my dad, and in the background is the fish house. I guess I was destined at a young age to be in this business. My loving father, which, you know, with me, it's not about the money. Well, this man here, when he passed away, we were at Glovna Funeral Home. And at the time, the mayor was Craig Fulton. And my dad was the type of guy, if he saw you broke down or you broke down on the side road, he pulled over. You had a tire or something, hey, could I give you a ride? It's just the way everybody knew my dad. And Craig Fulton came in the funeral home, he came up to me, the mayor, and he shook my hand. He said, Joe, sorry to hear about your dad. He said, but I want to tell you one thing. He said, every man and woman in City Hall today, all day, talked about what a great father you had. That was worth $1 million to me. And like I say again, it's not all about the money. It's about what you can give. What you can give to people, what you can give to your family, your friends, to the community, to some young person. Mentor somebody someday, because that's what I want to do. I want to take young people and I want to show you the way, because with my grandfather and my father, they showed me the way of where to get to here today to talk to all of you, who I was so nervous last night. You know, sitting at home like, you know, my wife's helped me, you know, put some stuff together. And I hope that I've outlined what my grandfather went through, my father went through, and what I went through. And another thing I wanted just to say real quick is when you run into a problem, get yourself out of it. Think of a way. There's a way. You know, my wife says, you're always trying to solve things. But that's just the way I am. It was like when we first got married, the Chamber of Commerce ordered like 200 live lobsters. So he says, Joe, where are you? The lobster guy in Boston, he says, where are you from? I said, well, you're going to fly them into Cleveland Hopkins. And he thought I said Cincinnati. So I come home with my little pickup truck that you'll see here. It says Bennett Fish. It's refrigerated. And my wife, we didn't have any kids then. We just got married on Cambridge there. And she meets me at the door. She always would ride with me. And she'd pack some coffee for us and some sandwiches or something. And we would talk, you know. So she meets me at the door, and there's no sandwiches and no coffee. And I thought, we're roughing it. We're going to stop at McDonald's or something, you know. And she's got this look on her face, and she said, "Your live lobsters, they're sitting in Cincinnati, Ohio." I said, "Cincinnati, Ohio? I told the guy Cleveland Hopkins." Thank God, my brother-in-law, Tom Filipino, he was in shipping. I paced back and forth. She goes, "You better call Tom." I said, "I don't know." I paced him back and forth. So, okay. I called my brother-in-law, Tom. I said, "Tom, I got live lobsters. They're sitting in Cincinnati. I called the guy in Boston. I says, "They're in Cincinnati. I told you Cleveland." He says, "Well, how far is Cincinnati?" I says to my wife, "How far is Cincinnati?" She says, "Oh, it's like, what is it, 6 hours or whatever?" She goes, I said, 6 hours? I got to drive 6 hours there and 6 hours back. So I called my brother-in-law, Tom, who was in shipping. He said, "Let me make a couple phone calls." He called. He knew somebody in Cincinnati. The live lobsters, he got them put on a plane to come back here because the bake wasn't until late in the next day or something. So we got him back to Cleveland. He helped. That's solving problems. You know, he solved the problem for me, and that's just one quick story. But you know, can you imagine all those live lobsters sitting in Cincinnati? What if I didn't have my brother-in-law? What if I didn't solve this? What am I going to go tell the Chamber of Commerce? Sorry, I don't have your live lobsters for your clam bake. They would say, "Well, Joe, you ain't getting our business no more." And I think that's a big thing in business. If you can solve problems, that is the way to work your business. I hope in this story that I've, you know, explained who I am, what you can do for yourself, and where you need to go and where you need to be. But remember one thing, I tell all my friends that are in business. I got a friend who owns a bowling alley, and I called him this morning because I was coming here. He went to Bruno Mars. Was Bruno Mars on last night? He went to Bruno Mars, so I sung him a little song. And I said, "Mark," but Mark was the head of admissions at Michigan State, Mark Nazario. Now, and then he was the head of admissions or something at Cleveland State. We met for lunch, and you know your friends that want to get in business, their whole life, they come to you. And Mark and I are having lunch in Cleveland. He says, "You know, Joe," he says, "I want to open my own business." I said, "Well, okay, Mark, what do you want to do?" He says, "I want to own a bowling alley." I said, "You're head of admissions. You make great money. You make great, great benefits. You want to own a bowling alley?" He says, "You know what?" He says, "It's not about the money." He says, "They want us to bring these kids in and get them in." And, you know, Mark was all about helping people. He's not about, and that's one thing that drives me nuts too. I'm going to tell you all right now, and I flip out about this, numbers. You know, Blue Ribbon used to call me in, "Well, you know, your numbers, your numbers, your numbers." I said, "Yeah, Mike, but who goes to, when Fratello's, when Ron and Craig's mom passed away, who went and represented the company?" It's like going back to the thing is the money. Is it really, are we all here just because of the money? No, we aren't. And so anyways, back to Mark Nazario. So Mark says, "I want to open up." So he says, "Joe, come and look." So I go in this bowling alley. It's Bay Village, Bay Lanes. I look around. I'm thinking to myself, is he nuts? But I'm smiling. I'm smiling at him because I love Mark. We tell each other all the time. He's like a brother to me. I love him. And he says, "Well, I'm going to put flat screen TVs up here." And then I start seeing the vision. I see the movie starting. He's showing me the vision. I'm going to put flat screen TVs. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do kids' birthday parties. I'm going to give them a pin with all the kids. All the other kids will sign it. I'm going to sit them in a special chair. And he shows me all this stuff, and then I started, hey, this guy's got a good plan. He didn't have to show me what he's going to make and his numbers and this and that. He had the vision. So with the vision, I saw it. But I told him one thing. You know what I told Mark? I said, "Okay, when you go to sleep now that you got this business, I want you to sleep with one eye open." And he started laughing. He's like, "Joe," I said, "You're gonna, because you got to pay attention to this." It's like a baby. You have to nurse it. You have to love it. You have to help it grow. And he said, really, sleep with one eye open? I said, yeah, sleep with one eye open. So we've joked for years about the one eye open at night. So this morning I called him about the Bruno Mars. And I told him, I said, Mark, I'm so proud of you. He's been in business 8 years. He's doing great. I said, you can close both eyes now. You're doing fine. And that's where I left the conversation. And I want to thank everybody here this morning. I want to thank all you that came and listened to my story. I hope I've helped in some ways. Like I said, my card's there. I'm always available. I love what I do. I love people. I love to make things go. I love you think about all these people, Boeing and all these engineers and people who have made things happen in business, the real estate entrepreneur, or the Howard Hanna guy. I mean, I guess he started somewhere. He probably started in a garage. I don't know, And that's where I started. I started in a garage. Disney started in a garage, I think. They always see it on a commercial. But you can start any business anytime you want. You just have to put in the dedication and the time, and you have to be sincere, and you have to be willing to work the hours you have to work. And then, once you have that all down, you surround yourself with the right people, then you can take your time. So I want to say, from the Bennett family, I want to say thanks for listening, and it was nice meeting you all. So I want to have a great day.
Does anybody have questions for Joe? I think you hypnotized all of us. I was just imagining, as you're saying all these different things, I imagined myself like on the boat and doing all these things, and it's a wonderful story.
Lisa,
Wonderful story.
pass the mic to them.
I have a question. I just wanted to say you're a very engaging speaker.
Thank you.
You had me from start to finish.
To start to finish, okay. And you know what I got to say to you is that that's.
No, it's the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, I
No,
talk
thank you. No,
I
thank
talk
you.
in front of groups
Thank
a
you.
lot, and I get nervous
Thank you.
sometimes, but
Well, believe me, I was nervous last night because it's been a long time. I took a speech at Lorain High and talked in front of people, and I acted. I remember coming out acting the first time, and Louis Rangel was like, "That's Joe Bennett on stage," and I got to keep this straight face for the English teacher, And we all have these stories, but no, thank you very much. You made my day. You made my day. It's all about keep it. What you say is, I was just saying this morning, I delivered some perch to the Polish club in Elyria. And Bob there, he started talking to me, and he goes, yeah, Joe, how long have you been doing this? I started telling him a little bit of the story, because I said, this will help me with my morning. And I said, what church you go to? He said, well, we used to go, because we used to go to St. Mary's in Elyria on Middle Avenue. And I'm Catholic, and I'll always be Catholic, it's just one of those things. And I was an altar boy, but you got to go where you're happy, and you have to, people have to keep your interest. Like I wasn't getting anything out of St. Mary's, and God bless St. Mary's Church. It's got a lot of good people. Then we went over to St. Jude's in Elyria, and I just really didn't get anything out of St. Jude's, and it's a nice parish. And then we went to that, was it Mount Carmel? It's in Grafton. It's a new church. And Father John Seabolt, he does the same thing. He tells you a story. He makes you part of the sermon. And like the other churches, I'd be like, sit up so my wife, doesn't give me the old, elbow or something, and he just keeps us so engaged. I just love the stuff that he tells us a story about somebody or something that happened, and it makes a big difference. You hate to go sit in on anything where it's just, you're like, whether it's church or talking to somebody, it just, we all live interesting lives. You all have too, it's from your grandparents to your parents to you, I always say, my grandfather, America, for all of us, America was the canvas, and our grandparents were the paint on the canvas. They made it all happen. It's like painting a picture. It's what it is. It's all good. So, like I say, have a great day. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Maddie from Northwest Bank. Thank you. And I just want to say thank you again for you having your business in Lorain. I was born and raised in Lorain all my life. My in-laws had a business, which you probably know, was right down the street, M&M Mower.
Oh, M&M Mower. Yeah, they were right down the street from us.
When I met my husband, he would always say, 'cause that's where he worked. It was a small little business, family owned, and they'd say, oh yeah, we're gonna go get fish at Bennett's. And I'm like, ooh, fish, yuck. You know, I never liked fish. I did not like
That's okay. That's good.
Sorry.
Thank God you're not the majority, but thank you.
That at the time I did like fish the way I do now, because my husband introduced me to a lot of different foods, and one was fish, and I love it. I could eat it every day. But I just appreciate you wanting to keep your business in Lorain, because I've seen the change too, and it's still devastating. So just putting your staple there, and people knowing your name,
Yes.
even though you're not you are a Bennett, but you're not a Bennett.
Yeah, I'm Panuzzo Bennett. And I'm going to go to Italy. When I got married in 1989, my wife Michelle said, Joe, my father was going to Italy for the first time. My grandfather had been back, but my father was going for the first time. I just got married, and my dad says, I'm going to Italy. You want to go with me? I'm like, Dad, who's going to deliver the fish? And my wife said, you better go with your father. And this is one less. Believe me and my parents were very close. My mom and dad, we shared everything. And my wife said, Michelle said, Joe, you better go with your father to Italy. And I said, who's going to deliver the fish? You are, Mickey? It's not going to work, And I said, I'll go next time. She said, there won't be a next time. And my father went one more time, and that was it. And that's the only thing that I'm telling you right now, and I've told people this, and they've come up and they've thanked me, and I'll tell you all here today, if your mom and dad, if you're having a rough day, good day, whatever, you're cruising down the road, pull into their driveway. Pull into their driveway, have a cup of coffee. Me and my dad, we drank many a coffee together, broke bread together. I told a guy this, it's a family that was in the restaurant business, Matt Swingo. I don't know if any of you know Matt Swingo, but I said, go visit. And he came to work one day, and he saw me. He said, Joe, I'm so glad you told me that. He said, I was driving home. I was tired. I had my daughters, and he said, I pulled in my parents, and I thought of you. And he said, I'm so glad, because you never know. You never know when the last time's going to be you're going to talk to them. See, I have no regrets. With my parents, I hung out with them. I talked to them. My mother was, dying at Mercy Hospital. She had lung cancer. They were both smokers, because all of her parents smoked back then. And she's laying in bed, and I'm saying to my mother, I said, Mom, what do you want me to tell everybody? What do you want me to tell the grandkids? What do you want me to tell everybody? She's like, she was laying on her side looking at me. She goes, put her hand up. She goes, Joe, I've lived a good life. I raised 6 boys and took care of your father. I'm good. What could I say after my mother says that? She's ready to go, She's accepted it, and she's telling me, don't worry, I'm good. And so I'm sitting with my mom, and how mothers are, And I'm falling asleep in the chair, and I'm just sitting there, and I didn't think she saw me, and she goes, Joe. I said, what, Mom? She said, go home to your family. She said, come in the morning, we'll have breakfast. That was my mom. I just had parents that went just that extra step all the time. When I had my first son, Dominic, I stored at Cleveland Cold Storage some fish there, a big freezer. And my parents are at the freezer with this guy named, I'll call him John. I think his name was John. They're like, John, what do we do? How do we pull the product? My parents are trying to deliver it to the Roman Room in Lorain on Broadway, and all the, that's just the folks, the parents I had. They were just salted earth. But, thank you so much, and thank you so much. And here's what we need at the end of the story. We need more young people wanting to go into business and be entrepreneurs. We need to teach the right things, and we all need to slow down. That's another thing. That's the one thing I'll end up with too. I love that once I get rolling, but we all need to slow down. We need to slow down. You need to take time. And you know what they say, I've heard this, and I was telling a college student this yesterday. I said, I heard this, and I want you all to think about it. And it makes a lot of sense, and it's true. And I've done it before, so I know. The good ones, I don't do it all the time, but I can do it once in a while. The good ones know how to slow down time. Slow it down. Take that time to tell your parents, your husband, your wife, your friends that you love them. You know, when I first started telling them, these friends I talk about, I used to tell them, oh, I love you, brother. They'd say, okay, Joe, have a nice day. Because they didn't know how to say that. Now they're telling me before I tell them. And they're just, friends that if I broke down 2 o'clock in the morning, I could call them, okay, Joe, I'll be right there. Take the time to slow it down. We are all too much in a rush. There's plenty enough time. We're not going to want to be on our deathbed saying, okay, can I go to work tomorrow? Can I work? You got to know how to blend them all. You got to know how to slow the time down. I got a son that, this is the last thing I'll say, I'll let you go. The one had open heart surgery. Dr. Liebman's like, your son is very sick. You're going to have to go to university. I said, I don't know how to get it. Don't worry. He's like my father. He said, I'm going to draw you a map. Because I didn't have MapQuest or phone, He said, I'm going to draw, And that's when my whole perspective of everything went I got to really focus on what is right and what I got to do. And family comes first. And everything worked out. But I'll tell you about my son, Brendan. He played baseball for me. I was his coach. And my son used to slow the game down. Matt McFrederick was my good starting pitcher, and Brendan was my closing pitcher. And I love baseball. I love the Indians. I love baseball. I played football. I ran track. I played basketball, like I told you. But you know what? My favorite sport is baseball. You know why it's baseball? Because baseball, if you think about it, baseball is about life. Man on first, you're going to bunt him to get him to second. It's all about what we do every day. But in this, Matt McFrederick he was, a good pitcher, but he wanted to get up and throw the ball. He's just a young kid. He wanted to throw, get up there and throw, And my son was the catcher that took his time and got back down, played with his glove a little bit. And I'm on the sidelines, and I'm watching my son. I says, he's slowing him down. He's slowing him down. Then I would watch Matt relax and come down. And then he started pitching. Strike, you're out. I said, Brendan, slowing it down. And when we went to North Carolina to visit Louis Rangold, who retired, and he told me, he said, this is my 21-year-old son. He tells me, he says, Dad, people in the South are so nice. So here's my 21-year-old son. He's listening, he's watching, he's learning. And this is the last thing. He tells me, my 21-year-old son tells me, these people are less stressed than us in the North. And I'll leave you with all that. And I thank you. Have a great day today. Have fun.